Hello. Today, I want to share a story from my life about how I almost lost $75,000 to my thieving and manipulative in-laws. Thankfully, I knew my way around and managed to get it back. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Tina, and I'm 38 years old. I'm married to the love of my life, Joe. Joe and I met back in college. We had the same elective and got paired together for a project. With every meeting, we realized how much we liked each other. After the project, we continued to hang out and soon began dating. Our relationship was very smooth. We had similar personalities and meshed well together. One of our biggest shared values was our love for our families, which is why about 6 months into dating, we introduced each other to our parents. Joe's meeting with my parents went well, but meeting his parents wasn't the best. Joe's parents, Carl and Julia, were very closed off. They didn't try to get to know me or show any interest in what I was saying. By the end of dinner, I was beyond embarrassed. Imagine telling a joke and having no one laugh, just staring at you blankly. That's exactly what the entire dinner was like. When Joe dropped me off at my place, he'd apologized for his parents' behavior. He explained that they were apprehensive about him dating in college because they wanted him to focus on his studies. I felt like that was a valid reason, so I let it go. About 3 years after we graduated, Joe and I got married. We waited until we were financially stable and settled to tie the knot, which was a great decision because being able to spend without worrying about the future is a blissful form of security. After we got married, I noticed a change in Julia and Carl's attitudes toward us. They had been cold to me up until the wedding when I told them where I worked during a conversation. I held a good position at a well-recognized bank, which must have piqued their interest. Suddenly, they were a little more open. However, this openness came with something ugly. They would make crude remarks at my expense. Whenever Joe or I said anything about it, they brushed it off, telling us to lighten up because they were only joking. Joe and I aren't very confrontational, so we just stuck with it. Then came the requests for money. I come from a low middle-income family, so I knew what struggling looked like. The only people who helped my family were other family members, so when my family asked for money, I never said no. It started innocently with Julia needing money to pay off a ticket. She hadn't brought enough money and asked me to bring some over. I helped her out and never asked to be paid back, and she never made an effort to repay me either. Then they started purposely forgetting their wallets at home or not bringing enough money whenever we went out, expecting Joe or me to cover for them. Eventually, they straight up asked us for money. We were spending more money on them than on ourselves, so Joe and I sat down to discuss things. "You know I love your parents, but we can't keep giving them money and covering for them like this," I said. "Yeah, I wouldn't have any issue if they weren't working individuals who make more money than us," Joe agreed. "I just don't know how to bring it up. It feels wrong." "I feel the same, but we can put that money to better use, like buying a house," I suggested. "You want to buy a house?" Joe asked, surprised. "Yes, I've always wanted to own a house," I replied. "Me too," Joe said. "We'll have to stop enabling my parents and live frugally to save quickly, but it will be worth it." "Oh my God, are we doing this?" I exclaimed. "Absolutely. It's been a dream of mine to own a house with you," Joe said. Joe and I started saving the next month, putting aside more than half of our pay towards savings. It was initially a struggle because we were used to certain comforts, but we quickly adapted. We also had to talk to Carl and Julia about not giving them money anymore. Needless to say, they were not happy. Julia bluntly asked Joe if I was the reason for this change. Joe told her it was a joint decision and explained our plans to buy a house, hoping it would get them off our backs, and it worked like a charm. However, they did stop contacting us as much. Joe and I didn't let Carl and Julia's lack of contact bother us. We focused on our work and saving as much as we could. Of course, sometimes we dipped into our savings to finance something big, but overall, we stayed committed to our goal. We got right back on track with our savings and didn't let that setback get us down. In about 2 years, we had saved up around $76,000 in our joint account. We were overjoyed and shocked by how well we had done. One weekend, Joe had been avoiding me all day. I was concerned that something was up, but every time I tried to talk to him, he went silent or said it was nothing and walked away. I gave him the entire day, but by evening, I sat him down for a serious talk. "Okay, I've given you time to figure out what's wrong. You need to tell me," I said. There's nothing wrong, Joe replied, trying to deflect. I'm going to stop you right there. Both you and I know that's a lie. Spill. Please don't be mad at me, he hesitated. What's wrong? I did something really bad. Oh no, what did you do? It's okay, you can tell me. I won't get mad. I gave my parents the money we had been saving up for our new house. What? Why? They called me yesterday morning and said they had a lot of medical bills and other huge debts. They made me feel guilty about having so much money, so I gave it to them. I wanted to help them out, you know. Oh, sweetheart, I don't know how to feel about that, but if you stand by your decision to help your family, who am I to say anything? Well, that's the thing. I really regret my decision. Why? I was scrolling through Facebook this morning before you woke up and saw this post my dad made about them going on a luxury cruise they had always wanted to go on. Here, look. I was panicking. I didn't know what to think. How could Joe do this to us? More importantly, how could Carl and Julia do this? We had been transparent with them about our struggles. Joe had opened up to them a lot about it, and they had given him advice on how to save money. Seeing them openly declare their luxury cruise on social media, thanks to us, felt like a slap in the face. I made it worse for myself by checking our joint account balance. There was just $11,000 left. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my mind blank from shock. All the money we had saved over the past few years was gone. All the years we lived frugally felt wasted. I couldn't be mad at Joe because he truly thought his parents were in serious need, but seeing them spend it on a luxury vacation was something I couldn't stand. Joe looked miserable, and while I couldn't be mad at him, I also knew I couldn't easily let this go. He knew his parents had a history of tricking family members out of their money. Usually, it was a small enough amount to forgive, but $75,000 was too much. I grabbed my keys and drove to his parents' place. I knew they wouldn't give up without a fight, but I was determined to get our money back. Once I parked in their driveway, I took a couple of seconds to steel myself for the confrontation. I walked up to their door and rang the bell. Julia answered. Oh, what are you doing here? Who is it, honey? Carl called from inside. It's just Tina, Julia replied. What's she doing here? Just ask her. Tina, be quick. We don't have time for you. Because you're too busy spending our money. I told you she'd be here for the money, Carl said, approaching the door. Look, Joe gave it to us fair and square. Only because you tricked him. We did not. Yes, you did. You lied about having to pay off huge medical bills. It wasn't a lie. We really did have a lot of debt, but we cleared it all out. I'm glad we could help. Now fork over the rest of the money. It was given to us, so we get to decide what to do with it. Yeah, could you do us a favor and not disturb us again? Thanks. With that, Julia shut the door in my face. I was stunned. I tried ringing the doorbell again and even banged on the door, but they ignored me. I sat back in my car, fuming. I started the car, reversed out of their driveway, and drove around until my anger calmed a little. The audacity that Carl and Julia had was shocking. How could they not feel bad for robbing their own child by tricking him? I remembered how miserable Joe had looked when I left, so I drove back home. By the time I got back, a good couple of hours had passed, and my phone had died pretty much as soon as I had left the house earlier. When I walked into the house, I saw Joe pacing back and forth in the living room, looking beyond worried. He didn't notice me, so I cleared my throat to get his attention. He looked up in surprise before running up to me and hugging me really tight. Oh my God, thank God you're safe. I was so worried, he said. Why? I asked, taken aback by his intense relief. You disappeared 4 hours ago and your phone was unreachable. You didn't respond to any of my texts either. How could I not have been worried? Okay, that was bad of me. I'm really sorry. It's okay. I'm just glad you're safe. Where did you go, though? Your parents' house. My parents? Why? To ask them about giving us our money back. Oh, Tina, I'm so sorry. Shush, I get where you were coming from, but you need to have your wits about you. Yeah, I will. Did they give you the money back? Nope. Oh yeah, remind me why this isn't making you freak out. Because I have a plan to make them give back our money. Is there any way I could help? Oh yeah, definitely. This plan rides on your help. Joe had a friend who worked with the income tax department, and I worked for the bank where Carl and Julia had their accounts. All I needed was a letter from Joe's friend to freeze their accounts. I would love to see how long Carl and Julia would stay away from me after they could no longer use their money. Joe's friend owed him a huge favor because Joe had used his connections to help his friend get his current job. Joe called him up and explained the whole situation. His friend was more than ready to provide a letter ordering a freezing of Carl and Julia's account. I got on a call with him the next day at work and provided him with all the necessary details about Joe's parents' accounts. We went over the letter together, and he told me that I would get it in a week. That timing was perfect because it was right before Carl and Julia were set to go on their cruise. Since their cruise was all expenses paid, they probably wouldn't even notice that their accounts were frozen. With that extra time, I could also work on filing a case against them for lying and stealing from us. I knew that Carl and Julia would contact me when they realized their accounts were frozen. I would use the case as leverage to get them to pay me back in full. A week later, Carl and Julia left for their cruise. They made sure to send Joe a picture of them on the ship, rubbing salt in the wound. Joe felt beyond upset when he saw the picture, and if I'm being honest, it made my blood boil too. But I knew this would just be further proof of their crime when I filed the case. When they finally got back, Joe and I felt our excitement creep up every day as we waited for a phone call from his parents. It took about a week before they called. "Hi, sweetheart." Julia's voice was overly sweet. "Sweetheart," Joe echoed, confused. "Did you hit your head somewhere?" "Don't be silly, sweetie. Of course I didn't. Although, yes, there it is. What's wrong?" "Don't be rude, but yes, Carl and I have a bit of a problem." "And why do I help you out? Did you guys ask me not to disturb you?" Joe's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Tana, please," Julia begged. "It's a matter of our survival. Our bank account is frozen for some reason. And since you work at our bank, could you look into it for us?" "I'll think about it. Please, we're begging you to somehow unfreeze our accounts. We don't have much cash on us to last us through the week." "Oof, that's tough. Anyways, I'll see what I can do." I hung up the call, feeling a tingle of sick satisfaction from Julia and Carl's desperation. But my plan wasn't done yet. I was going to string them along for a while before revealing the truth. I wanted them to feel the anxiety and betrayal I had felt. The next week, Joe mostly ignored their calls. When he did pick up, they asked for money, but he always coldly said no and claimed he was busy. I carried on as usual with my week. Julia called me every day to check if I had any information on how to unfreeze their account. With each passing day, I sensed their panic rising. Somehow, they managed to survive another week. By the second week, I began to ignore their calls altogether, only answering occasionally to tell them I couldn't talk at the moment. It was satisfying to play with them as they had played with us. But eventually, I got bored of the games. So I told them I had information for them. They eagerly invited Joe and me over to dinner at their place. All of their rudeness and mean attitude were absent. Suddenly, they were super nice to me, even prioritizing me instead of ignoring me like usual. Joe and I struggled to contain our laughter at their pathetic attempt to seem nice. After dinner, I pulled out a folder containing the information from my bag and set it on the table. Julia and Carl looked at me nervously. "Oh, what did you find out, dear?" Julia asked. "Yeah, will we be able to get our account back?" Carl added. "I don't think so, at least not for a couple of months," I replied. "Wait, what? Why?" Julia exclaimed. "The funny thing is, I completely forgot I had done this when you were on your cruise," I said with a smirk. "What are you talking about?" Carl demanded. "I had your account frozen," I revealed. "What? Are you mad? Why would you do that?" Julia shouted. "That's what you get for manipulating your son and stealing from us," I said calmly. "You're a monster," Carl yelled. "No, you guys are the monsters. You knew just how much owning the house meant to Joe. You knew how hard he worked to earn that money. You knew all the sacrifices we made, yet you stole from us. How many times do I have to tell you that we did not lie? Get our account unfrozen now," Julia demanded. "You did lie. Just because you embellished the lie doesn't take away the fact that it was still a lie. Your account will remain frozen until you pay us back in full," I insisted. "We'll take you to court," Carl threatened. "I dare you to. I've already filed a case against you. If you don't pay us back in full, I'll push for the case, and then you'll have to do more than just pay me," I retorted. "How can you do this to your own family?" Julia pleaded. "Oh, please, Julia, don't even try. We're giving you guys a month to figure it out and give us the money," I said firmly. With that, I grabbed Joe's arm and we left. As soon as we sat in the car, we burst out laughing. We had done it. The look of shock and betrayal on Julia and Carl's faces was so worth it. They would know never to mess with us again. Joe tried to apologize to me again, but I assured him that it was all okay. We had ensured we'd get our money back and, in the process, given his parents a taste of their own medicine. I don't know how or where they got the money, but Carl and Julia paid us back a week after that dinner. I was beyond happy. Julia texted me, politely asking me to unfreeze their account, which I gladly did the next day at work. Joe and I spent the next few weeks finalizing our new house and moving in. We went low contact with Julia and Carl. We got fooled once, and it would be embarrassing if we let them fool us again. We're both people who value family and tend to have a very soft spot for them. Julia and Carl knew this, which is why we couldn't let them use it to their advantage again. They also never actually apologized for what they did, so we didn't want to be involved with them until they did. Joe and I are living happily in our beautiful home. We're even planning to start a family. At one point in my life, I really thought that I had to resign to my fate, but this experience taught me that if you take things into your own hands, life will go your way.